Pod. Pod.
Cool, man. How's it going?
Yeah, good, mate. Yeah. Are you based in London?
Yeah. So I kind of moved back to London about 12 years ago. So I was always from London, and I lived in Brighton for 10 years, and then kind of got excommunicated from Brighton. So I moved back. Yeah. But thanks a lot for asking me to come on the show.
No, man. Cheers for doing it.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, like quite a lot of the guests we've had on have mentioned you guys. So like, I'm really keen to get you on because they were like saying, one of the favourite bands from that time, and maybe an underrated band from that time.
Right. Oh, cool. That's nice. I've listened to a few. I mean, obviously, I knew about the podcast, and I listened to a few things, and yeah, it was nice. I listened to Mark Beaumont's one. Actually, it was just good. I really like Mark and stuff. So
yeah, I was going to ask you about him because he said he was tipping you guys to be the next big thing, ahead of the likes of the Libertines. Is that kind of attention you were aware of at the time?
Well, excuse me. Yeah, I sort of met up with Mark actually a couple of years ago. I've sort of maintained kind of contact with him, and he was sort of talking about how he really felt like at the time there was a sort of an almost kind of unspoken rivalry between us and them. And I guess that, I guess we did sort of feel like that at the time. We played some quite early shows with them, before either of us had released a record. And, I think we were kind of aware that there was some kind of, that there was some attention on us, and we knew that there was loads on them, and I guess, at that age and how it is with kind of like, the music scene then, that was kind of centered around the NME and stuff, and kind of we knew that there was a lot of bands like checking each other out, sizing each other up, and that there was a lot of bands the NME were kind of talking about at the time. It was pretty exciting, really. Actually, it was good to sort of be part of it. But yeah, I do remember, sort of feeling that and thinking, and then them like. Them doing loads better than us, But I've always had this thing though, like I don't know what it is. Like you sort of ended up kind of feeling quite sort of, well, I did certainly, and maybe the rest of the band did. Yeah, we were always kind of a bit jealous about what was going on with other bands. We never really felt like we were getting anywhere ourselves. There was always this feeling of kind of, being kind of shoveled up a hill, kind of backwards, and trying to play catch up, really. Always feeling kind of like we were the sort of outsiders and kind of forgotten ones. There was always that kind of feeling of kind of general sort of self-pity and self-loathing that we kind of had. But yeah, I mean, Mark Beaumont really sort of championed us and stuff, and it was really great. And the NME did, and Kerrang, and lots of magazines. So it was really good, man.
Yeah, I was reading one of Mark's like gig reviews for you guys in 2005, I think it was.
Yeah.
He put in there, like, make no mistake, 80s Matchbox are by far the best new band in Britain today. So really, really pushing you guys, kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And it was sort of, it was a great time, and it was sort of, it was great, really, like the NME back then, I sort of thought, it was quite exciting to kind of read it and kind of be in it, every week, and all the other bands. But we always just sort of felt like we were kind of on the outside, we never really felt like anyone really, I know Mark did, I know the NME, but in terms of other bands, we always felt like we were just kind of irredeemably unpopular, and yeah, we never really seemed to kind of feel very, like we were kind of very cool,
Yeah, well, that's one of the questions we ask, is like whether bands felt part of a community back then, or whether they were just concentrated on their own band kind of thing. Is that what you say? You kind of like, you didn't really feel part of that community?
There definitely was, like I was saying, there was a kind of a scene around the NME, I suppose, like a load of bands that came out off the back of, I suppose, like the Strokes and the White Stripes, Those were the two initial bands. I think they came out before everybody else. And then there was The Wave in 2002, which was kind of like off the back of it. And I think we were definitely sort of part of that community to a certain degree, but we never really hung out that much with other bands. We always felt like, I don't know, maybe we were just a bit sort of socially awkward or something, but we used to just end up going to kind of all the sort of events where all the other bands were, and maybe getting a bit sort of overexcited and just getting so kind of trashed that we'd always kind of end up getting thrown out. And I think everyone was just a bit like standoffish. I don't know what it was. It was probably all in our heads, though, to be honest. I think it's just that thing when you're in a band and you know, you're sort of younger and you feel this kind of, I felt like kind of, you know, threatened by other people. And you're always like, oh, there's that band and there's that band and they're doing this and they're doing this. And it was this kind of internal dialogue that sort of went on, but it was all just kind of part of it, really. Yeah, so I think we probably did. We were quite good friends with the Cooper Temple Clause. Yeah. And obviously, you know, I remember hanging out with the Paddingtons, obviously, you know, and I remember, we hung out with the Libertines a bit in the beginning, you know, and then we seemed to go our separate ways with those guys. I think we ended up kind of in a heavier scene, really. Yeah, like we ended up starting a lot with them, but they, you know, it was a different kind of music, really. I mean, we ended up going down the kind of the Kerrang route a lot more and playing with like heavier bands and, you know, playing with bands like Placebo and Queens of the Stone Age and System of a Down and that kind of stuff, really. What other bands did we hang out with? We toured with the Others quite a bit, you know. The Towers of London. So they were all on the same management company as us.
Yeah, I was going to say about the Others because we had Dominic Masters on who said he actually bumped into you quite recently outside Primark.
Yeah. I really liked Dom, actually. You know, it was weird. I hadn't seen him for years and years and years and years. And then I bumped into him outside Primark. And then about a week later, I saw him at Fat White Family at the Kentish Town Forum. Yeah. So it was really nice to see him and bump into him because I don't think I'd seen him since we were in South by Southwest in like 2006, playing a showcase there because we were on the same management stuff. So we were on the same management as the Rakes and Towers of London and those guys. So we all went over there and did a gig together.
I mean, that festival always seems so far away, but so like kind of one of the best ones to play.
Yeah. It was really funny. Like I think the first time we went there, we didn't really have any visas. So our manager had just said, oh, you know, tell them that you're going over there to rehearse. You know, you're going over to America to do a rehearsal. So do you know what I mean? Like as if you'd go all the way over there to do a rehearsal. And obviously they knew that like this festival was going on. So it was really funny. And it was just after 9/11, you know, the first time we went there. So right. 2 years after. So the security was pretty strict. But then when we went there again in 2006, you know, we did go and get like visas and it was quite weird because we went to the American Embassy in London and like there was every single British band that was going over there to play, all in this kind of orderly queue of about 100 people, you know. it was like the sort of NME Awards, but kind of at 7 a.m. in a queue, kind of going into the embassy. Yeah, everyone trying to be. And I remember getting to the front and I still had a load of weed in my pocket. I hadn't really kind of registered with me that they would search you when you went in. Our singer turned up without his passport and I turned up with a load of weed on me. And we were both just at the front and he had to go back and back to Brighton and get his passport. And I was just like, oh, fuck. Like, you know, how could it not occur to you that you were going to get searched going into the American Embassy? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it was good. Yeah, we went over there. It was a good festival. You know, good to kind of, you know, it's like kind of being in some kind of spaghetti western or something, kind of playing a gig.
Okay, so like if we just skip back to the beginning a little bit. Yeah. Can you just give us an idea of how you went from starting the band to eventually getting a record deal?
Well, the other 4 were all from Brighton. I was the only one who's from London, and I moved down to Brighton in the kind of in the autumn of '98. And I'd kind of seen Guy around a little bit. I I kind of been down to Brighton on a few day trips and seen him in this pub called the Heart and Hand in Brighton, and sort of asked him if he could sort me out any speed, and he didn't. You know, he kind of blanked me really, and then it was quite funny, and then I ended up moving down to Brighton and kind of hanging out with those guys pretty much straight away. Yeah, it was all around this pub in Brighton called the Heart and Hand, and I met them, and it was like I don't know, it was like the greatest thing ever. Really, we just sort of went on a kind of massive bender for about a year and a half. You know, ecstasy was kind of flourishing in Brighton, and we just did shitloads of that. And talked about kind of, you know, being in a band, but we didn't really have any songs or a name, and none of us could play anything. So Guy had never sung, the rest of the band, and then we met Andy Huxley kind of around this time, and he was like really good at the guitar at 15, like was like fucking amazing, and none of us could really do anything. So Tom could play a little bit of guitar and ended up writing kind of a few songs on the first album. But so we just ended up kind of like telling everybody that we were in a band, and it was amazing, but it didn't actually exist. So everyone kind of didn't really take us very seriously. But then I think after about a year and a half of kind of talking about it, and we were kind of already a bit broken by then from doing too much ecstasy. We were only 19, you know. We'd already kind of had enough. We thought, oh, you know, maybe we should try and start the band. Somewhere in the middle of it, like we were on acid, and Guy sort of said the words 80s Matchbox B-Line Disaster. And we thought, oh, you know, he thought really like that would be a really great name for a band. So that's what we called it. And we just went with that really, because it kind of made sense to us in our kind of, you know, drug-addled stupor. I don't think it made sense to everybody straight away. I guess that's another reason why we felt kind of left out, because everybody else was called the Somethings, right? And we had this really long name, and we were like this really intense band. And and like we just sort of what did we do? Yeah, so we ended up kind of starting to rehearse, but we couldn't get past that song Chicken. Like it took us like months to get past the sort of first verse. Like none of us could really play. So anyway, we ended up kind of rehearsing really hard actually, and then we ended up doing a gig. But by the time we ended up doing a gig, no one believed that in Brighton that we were doing a gig, because we'd been telling everybody we were in this band that it didn't exist. So it was all a bit weird. So we did this gig, and it was like, I mean, we were never very tight, you know, but it was such a fucking mess. It was incredible. But, you know, we kind of knew, though. That was the thing. We kind of knew, and I think it's okay to say this now because I'm not in the band and, you know, kind of looking in on it now, but we kind of knew that we were going to do something just simply because of the energy between the five of us was so kind of, you know, it was like something so sort of raw and visceral and exciting. And we were just sort of really charged up from being in each other's company, and kind of, you know, we were just really into the clothes and the music, and we just loved it. We were kind of obsessed with the idea of it, and that was kind of what we had, you know. And so when we got up there and did the first gig, it was just this fucking explosion of energy that no one had ever really seen before. And Everett True was there randomly. There was only about 4 people there, and he was randomly there and reviewed it for the Melody Maker. So we just started playing in Brighton, really, you know, and but we just had this kind of thing where we just went fucking apeshit when we got up there, and the song and what we had just sounded really, really fresh and kind of exciting. And we kind of knew it, you know, we knew it. We knew that we weren't tight, and we knew that we weren't, you know, musicians in the sort of, apart from Andy, you know, in the sort of traditional sense of the word, but we had something that was kind of pretty formidable. And I think that's what carried us through, really. But we did really sort of lock down, you know. We all had jobs, and we'd kind of go to work and we would rehearse every single night. And by this point, we'd kind of got a manager. So I moved to Brighton because I was really into this band called These Animal Men. I was so obsessed with that band, I moved to Brighton, and then their manager ended up sort of managing us. we were sticking up posters. We were doing this, what we considered to be a tour, which was 3 days in a row in Brighton at different pubs. And we called it the York Hunting Daughters Tour, after The Exorcist. So he saw us like putting up the York Hunting Daughters Tour posters and thought it was so fucking incredible that he came to the gig that night. But we were doing all kinds of weird things. Like we did a gig where we gave out mushroom soup at the door, you know, and kind of, yeah, a lot of people in Brighton were sort of talking about it. I mean, really, Guy was kind of famous in Brighton before the band even started. So we had that kind of leg up, really. Pretty small place, Brighton, but, you know, it was, you know, he was sort of really well known. And so our manager ended up kind of saying, oh, you know, you should come and do a gig. He thought we were just incredible, but just so loose, he couldn't believe it, you know. So we ended up kind of like, he's saying, oh, you know, come and do a gig in London. And, you know, for us, going to play a gig in London was like playing Wembley Stadium, you know.
Yeah.
The Dublin Castle, it was just like, you know, I drunk in there when I was 17. You know, the idea of playing a gig there was like literally playing to like a headline crowd at Wembley, and it was sold out. And it was like 8 labels came to watch us, and they all kind of turned us down, really, because we were just so loose and all over the shop. But we ended up kind of sort of playing a few, you know, out of London a bit and kind of getting better, getting tighter. And then we did a deal with Virgin, you know, like a 1 single deal. That was Morning Is Broken. And off the back of that, which we sold that out like 1,000 copies, because you could sell records quite easily in those days.
Yeah.
You know, 1,000 didn't really seem like very much back then, you know. And you know, we got a few little bits of press and radio, and then we went on tour with Ikara Cult and the Parkinsons, you know, which was like, you know, the Damned, the Ramones, and the Clash, like all going on tour together, you know, all the Damned, the Sex Pistols, and the Clash. It was like that, basically. You know, every night was like sold out. This is like, you know, no one knew who the bands were, but every night was sold out around Britain, you know,
right?
Because the NME had like printed one article, you know, about it. So, and off the back of that, we signed to Universal. Yeah, we had quite a few offers, you know, but it was kind of different back then. I think it was sort of easier, I think, you know, it seemed it anyway. So we signed to Universal in May 2002, and that was that really, yeah.
And obviously, like the album, it's only 25 minutes long.
Yes.
So were you like influenced by anyone in terms of that, or you were just like firing out music that you guys are into, kind of thing?
Well, the music had, like, you know, we were sort of listening to, like, we were sort of inspired by, I suppose, to be concise, you know, like the Pixies, the Doors, the Stooges, and we were smoking quite a lot of dope, you know, and I remember, like, the songs were a lot slower, and they had like this kind of groove to them, you know, and so and by the time we ended up kind of recording the album, you know, I think we kind of bent our minds to the point where we were doing these really intense live shows, and everything was like really fast to basically compensate for the fact that we couldn't really play. And that's what became so compelling, I think. And so when we went into the studio, we just played the songs really fast, 10 songs, you know, that was it, really. I think it was like, you know, it was just a snapshot, wasn't it, of where the band was at that time. You know, we were like kids, you know, just full of like uncontainable energy, and with a kind of we wanted to make music, you know, that was kind of for people who are flagging at 6 a.m, you know.
I was talking to Dan Wilson from Blackwire. On his episode, he was saying how he was into you guys.
Yeah, they were really great. Yeah,
and he was saying he wondered like what your aim was as a band when you first started, because obviously, like I say, you're quite different.
I think kind of lots of bands, you know, get signed, don't they? And they kind of get into doing drugs and that kind of lifestyle. But it was a bit like we'd sort of done it all before we got signed. And so when we got signed, it was about trying to kind of contain all of that, really. And I think the reason it probably sounded so different is because we kind of like, we kind of shot ourselves into the abyss already, you know. And I don't think any of the other bands had. That was the thing. And so that's why it sounded sort of so deranged and warped and off the wall. But yeah, I mean, it's also because I think, you know, Guy's vocals are really, really, really unique and amazing. And the songwriters, you know, I suppose Andy and Tom wrote a lot of the songs. You know, Andy particularly is, you know, such a unique guitarist. You know, that the songs ended up having this kind of peculiar sort of world of their own, really. You know, I think it was they're really sort of strong songwriters with such a sort of specific identity that I think they kind of created that kind of sound, you know, because we'd never really heard of the Cramps or the Birthday Party or any of those bands that we were kind of, you know, supposed to sound like. You know, that was all news to us, really. Psychobilly, we'd never heard of it, you know, but everyone kind of thought that we must love the Cramps, you know, and the Birthday Party, and it wasn't the truth, you know. I mean, Andy really loved Captain Beefheart, you know, but we were punks, really, you know. That's kind of where we came from, you know.
So yeah, that first album, Horse of the Dog, Paul Tippler produced it.
Yes.
He produced the likes of Placebo and Idlewild. Was there, did you like those bands? Did you like what he'd done with those bands before you worked with them, kind of thing?
I think it was really great working with Paul. He was amazing. I think he really liked Joy Division, and he saw in us, he saw Joy Division, and so he created, you know, something which he felt was kind of in line with that, really. But I guess we didn't know Paul when we met him. We went for a drink with him, and I guess at that point we were just meeting people, and our manager said, "Oh, Paul Tippler is going to come and do the record," and we were like, "Okay, cool," you know. So
yeah, just kind of got on with it, kind of thing.
Yeah. And then we went over to Chapel Studios in Lincolnshire, like residential studio, and sort of banged it out in a couple of weeks.
And then obviously, like, singles going to the top 40 off that first album. Was that, how did that feel at the time? Because we talked to people who said, you know, they had success in the early days and it kind of passed them by a bit because it's just all a bit of a whirlwind. But what was it like for you?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it was great. You know, but there was always just this feeling, you know, and all of the stuff I've said in this interview, I mean, you know, I'm just speaking for myself really and how I perceived the others to feel, but there was always this feeling that like what we were doing wasn't really good enough, you know. We never really got much praise from anyone, you know, in terms of within our own camp, you know, in terms of labels, managers. We always felt like our backs were up against the wall, really, and that we were this kind of and that we were kind of doomed, really. So obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, it was great. But I think when you're in the band and you're doing it, you don't have any perspective on what you're doing. You're just looking at like other bands and thinking, well, why are we not kind of in the top 10 or in the top 20, or why didn't we play Double the Pops and da. I guess there was that thing, I suppose, going back to the Libertines, you know, where I think at the time, you know, you were like, they had like one guitar band a week would play Top of the Pops. And I remember the first two singles, the Libertines were like one place higher than us in the charts on their singles. So we released stuff at really similar times. And so they did it both times. And so it was always this feeling of like, yeah, we're in the top 40, but like, it never really seemed like we were doing that well, I suppose. Yeah, which I suppose is kind of weird maybe to other people, because it did do well, you know, but yeah, you lose perspective on what's going on, you know.
I was reading on your Wikipedia that you were known for having a large black car with red and orange flames on each side. Is that right?
Yeah. So because the band was named after a car that we'd seen, we told the label that, and they bought us the car. So we had this kind of car that was like a 1947 Humber Pullman limousine, and we sort of, it was a bit ridiculous, really. Like it didn't really work very well, but we turned up at a few festivals in it, and then we didn't pay the parking fines on it. So it was kind of sitting in West London, and homeless people slept in it. And yeah, that was that really. It didn't really get you got towed away or something.
All right. Yeah, because in that Mark Beaumont gig review, I think you must have drove to the gig in it, because he said like fans were outside the gig looking into the car and stuff like that.
Yeah, we did. We did go to a few gigs in it, or maybe probably our manager just drove there and we sort of pretended that we'd turned up.
All right.
It's probably more likely what happened.
I saw an interview where you like mentioned earlier, you kind of reined in the drug taking a little bit when things started to kick off.
Well, it was a massive problem for me. I mean, I ended up going into rehab a couple of times, and I'm clean and sober now, just coming up to 9 years actually. But yeah, for me it was like a constant struggle and in and out of addiction really, with all drugs and booze, and so I really battled with that, and it was incredibly sort of painful throughout the whole band. And then I couldn't really tour anymore towards the end, and then the band split up in 2011, but we got back together for a little bit in 2013, I
imagine it's like quite hard to avoid all that stuff if you're in a band in that scene kind of thing.
Yeah, I definitely, but I mean, I think I probably would have gone that way anyway.
Okay.
But obviously, there's not that many kind of, situations where you can just get up and start drinking, or just get up and start doing drugs and not be fired from your job straight away, So it kind of, it probably exacerbated it or accelerated it a bit, but it kind of would have been like that anyway, really, I think, for me personally, But yeah, I mean, it's intense, isn't it? Because every night you're in a different city, different town, you have free booze, free drugs, people wanting to hang out with you, people wanting to have a party with you. It's intense. But I was always kind of, I definitely had a good time. But it was laced with a kind of deep sadness, because I guess I was kind of quite lonely in it. Really, I felt like I was kind of, I mean, addiction's a pretty lonely place to be, So there was a lot of people around, but I was pretty fucked up. And then in the end, I was just sort of kind of incapacitated by it all, really. So I wasn't able to do anything. That was by the time we hit 2011. Yeah.
Well, it's good to hear you come through all that anyway. Mate.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, we had Patrick Walden on from the Baby Shambles, who went through a similar thing as well.
Yeah, I know Patrick. Yeah,
and he said, I think a few years ago he finally got properly clean and stuff.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. Yeah, it's not easy. It took a while. I was trying to get clean in 80s Matchbox, but I could never really go and tour clean. But I have subsequently done many tours clean, so it's possible. Totally possible in other bands and stuff.
Yeah. Did you have like a bit of a? Was there a moment where it clicked, where you realised you couldn't do it anymore, or not really?
Yeah, just years of trying, years of just then like started to drink again, and then the drugs that I'd got into were sort of darker, and I was kind of just really lost in all of that, and I just had no money and nothing to eat, and it was just, and it's just a repetitiveness of then getting a bit of clean time and then doing it again, and I just kind of had enough, so I kind of committed, 9 years ago to sort of a sort of long-term recovery, really. But obviously, it's a day at a time, isn't it? But I've kind of, so it clicked for me then, But I should have really stopped, before the band had even started, It was already a massive issue for me then,
just going back to those early days, like you said, you supported some very good bands like Queen of the Stone Age, Placebo.
Yeah.
I mean, what was that like?
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah. It was really amazing. Yeah. Really great doing the Placebo tours and Queens of the Stone Age. And we went over to the desert to Joshua Tree to record our second album, and we started it in Sound City actually, where they did Nevermind, and then we went out to the desert. But Chris Goss did it, who's produced Queens of the Stone Age. So we kind of met up with those guys over there, and then kind of ended up going touring with them a couple of years later. It was really amazing. We supported Iggy Pop, Placebo. System of a Down was really good, but that's what I mean. I guess we kind of went down a slightly heavier route than some of the other bands that were kind of in the NME at the time, you know.
You're kind of quite glad you didn't get caught up in the NME thing too much, because like talking to people now, they kind of seem really proud to say that you're one of the favourite bands kind of thing, whereas we've had all this what do you call it, indie landfill talk, and like obviously you're not really involved in that, so in a way you're quite glad that you avoided all that, really.
I mean, it was good to be in the magazine, you know, all the time, you know, and you know, and I think it was great. I think kind of in a way, the music scene today kind of misses something like that, where like a go-to place for bands, because it's really hard to find out. You know, I mean, there's just so many blogs, aren't there now, and so many places to get information about stuff that. But yeah, it's just really, really hard to know where to look. But it was great. But yeah, I guess I'm sort of proud in a way, you know, that we were kind of out on our own a bit, that we had our own thing, and the kind of the weirdness of the band, you know, like we had a kind of harder name to digest than other bands, and you know, we never really we never did anything too sort of. You know, we never did anything that we didn't want to do. Do you know what I mean? You know, we never sold ourselves short. I'm kind of proud of that, and I'm proud of the kind of legacy that's created, of being kind of so sort of true to ourselves. Really, you know, I'm proud of that, and I think other people see that now. You know, I guess maybe going back to what I said about us being kind of, you know, feeling like no one really liked us. I think maybe people weren't really too sure what to make of us, really. I'm sure people, I feel a bit bad saying that. You're saying everyone really liked us, but I guess it was probably just our own paranoia, really, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just people we've talked to. I guess maybe like other bands really respect that kind of thing, maybe.
Yeah, I think people respect us now, definitely. At the time, I think, I'm not sure people knew what to make of us, you know.
Yeah, so going back to that second album, like going into it, did you feel much pressure after the first album, or what was your mindset going into that?
Oh, the whole, I mean, we were constantly under pressure all the time. I mean, that's what I mean about, you know, that kind of feeling where you never really felt like you were successful or you were succeeding, because the information you were getting from your kind of label and management, you know, was just, oh, you know, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this, and we need it now. And yeah, there was a pressure, because we'd just been on tour for 18 months solidly. And then you come back and then you have to kind of get in the studio and write another record, and then go onto the other side of the world and record it. And, you know, obviously it was amazing, you know, it was great fun, you know, and all of that. But there was definitely a pressure, like, and the label, you know, really wanted us to, it's so hard to know how to describe it, really. But everyone wanted a Radio 1 hit out of us, you know. So there was that pressure of kind of trying to kind of, you know, still be true to our own destiny and what we wanted to do, and the information we were getting was kind of, you know, we needed a pop hit. You know, we were never that kind of band. Yeah, I'm sure we probably tried to do stuff, but it never really worked out like that for us. So there was always a pressure, like that what we were doing wasn't really quite good enough. But I think that's probably the same with all bands. You know, it's good management, isn't it? You know, to be kind of like pushing you further, trying to kind of draw stuff out of you. You know. Yeah,
and obviously it's like nearly double the length of the first album. So were you trying to be a bit more conventional, or not really?
I think we just had a lot more songs. I think we went out to the desert. You know, there was, you know, we had loads more time in a way to record it. You know, we went out there with a massive budget, which just kind of seems incomprehensible really now, to go there and just fuck about in LA for 3 months and kind of, you know, make an album. And the songs weren't really finished when we went out there, so there was loads of experimentation. Chris Goss, who was really amazing, was sort of like got quite involved in the sort of the arrangement. So we went over there with some demos, and then he would like rearrange them, and then we'd rehearse them up. So there was a lot of kind of moving around with the songs on that record, whereas the first one was just we just went there and we banged it out as we would have done live, you know. But yeah, lots of sort of playing around with stuff and kind of ditching of songs, working on songs. So there was much more of a sort of a elongated process to it, you know.
Yeah, I've been listening to your music again this week, and that second album's great, I think.
Thanks, man.
You definitely hear the Queens of the Stone Age type of vibe on it.
It's got that desert vibe, hasn't it? Yeah, definitely.
And then I noticed, I was reading about you had like a bit of a side project called the Boogs. Is that right? Like, what was the thinking behind that?
I couldn't really tell you what the logical reason for that was, but I remember we were in New York and we shot a video and we were dressed up as green bees and like green bugs, and we were like walking around, and it was like St. Patrick's Day, and they thought we were like Irish mods and that we'd come over specifically to like from Ireland to celebrate St. Patrick's Day over there. It was all really confusing, and then the war broke out whilst we were there in 2003. So yeah, it was just a bit, but we shot this video. It was really cool. I'm not really quite sure what we were doing, but yeah, we did it. Yes.
How many songs did you do as the Boogs?
I think it was just that one.
Was it just one, right? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was just that one. Yeah.
And then I also saw you did a benefit gig for Brighton Football Club to try and get them to sign a new player. Just wondered if they ever did sign a player off the back of that.
Jesus, I can't really remember. I remember the gig, and and it was all really odd. There were these like, kind of like proper lads at the gig, obviously, coming up to us, like coked out of their faces, going, "Oh yeah, nice one, thanks a lot, yeah, thanks a lot." And it was just really confusing. I don't know why we did it, but I mean, obviously we were a Brighton band, but yeah, it was really peculiar. Yeah, I think they normally would have just been beating the shit out of us, those guys, but they seem to like be like, I don't know, like on loads of MDMA or something. We're like, oh, like hugging us. They were like really happy, yeah.
And am I right in thinking there was a bit of a hiatus between the second and third album?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely fucking no idea what was going on then. I mean, we Andy left in 2004, you know, so that was kind of hard. Because he was such a sort of important part of the songwriting, you know. So he left, and then Rich came in, which is really great. But it was a mixture of we got dropped by Universal. People were really wanting us to write 5, Radio 1 hits. So there was this kind of waiting around for us to do that. And I think it was just doing shitloads of drugs in Brighton, really, and the time just flew. It's not like we didn't have any songs. We were trying to carve out something that, wasn't really us. And I guess maybe we kind of lost our way a bit. But it's like what I was saying, when you're in the band, it's so hard to. It all seems kind of like reasonable what's going on, But we should have just come out with a record straight away. But we demoed so many songs, and I guess there was just this feeling that, like, yeah, they weren't Radio 1 singles, so we just kind of, and that was what kind of people wanted from us in terms of in the industry. So yeah, and we were just doing far too many drugs, and the time passed, and we came out with the third record. Yeah, but by that time, I think maybe maybe we'd waited a bit too long.
We're doing gigs in that time though, between those albums.
Oh yeah, like the band was active. Like we, we did load. We were touring loads. We even went to America. We did the Queen's tour. We did Scars on Broadway, which is System of a Down's thing. We did Glastonbury. We were still, really active, selling out all our shows. Still kind of there, but we were trying to sort of make this record, and we all just got a bit fucking lost in it. Management, us, picking around in this record, and it was our fault really as a band. I think probably we didn't quite have the we weren't unified enough to really pull it together. But it's hard, in a band. I think it's almost like the band is at its kind of perfect point just before you get signed. That's when the band's like really on fire, and you're all so unified and kind of, you're kind of, the friendships between you are really strong, and it's all just really beautiful, and you're kind of, it all comes together, and no one ever really gets to see that point, because then you get signed, and then you get thrown on tour for like years and years and years, and all these external forces come in, and people trying to kind of, direct the songwriting and trying to, all the shit goes on, and then everyone's just getting fucked, and it kind of it can be a bit hard to steady the ship sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, we've had the likes of Preston from the Ordinary Boys on, and he described it like a lot of being in the band is managing the decline. Is that something you could relate to? Yeah.
Just kind of like, how do you react? After you've done a record, how do you regroup after the inevitable kind of year-long tour that you do? How do you regroup and then kind of get straight back in and get on with the next record? I mean, that's what you have to do. You have to be relentless. We just fucked about too much with that third record. It's still an amazing record. I think I love it. I think it's great. But we went to the south of France to record it, which was kind of unnecessary. But it's a shame no one ever gets to see the band before it gets signed. Because that's when it's really like we were on fire then. I think to just early 2002.
Yeah. Is that before like the pressure kind of changes?
Yeah, it's just that all these external forces come in, and everyone kind of the internal struggles start. I think it's the same with any band that I've spoken to. Really, everyone's kind of wants to start doing different things. People want the band to go in different directions. Some people are getting out of their mind, some people aren't getting that out of their mind. Labels and management come in and they want you to go a certain way. Certain people in the band don't want to go that way. Certain people in the band do want to go that way. I mean, you end up having loads of fucking discussions about nothing that go on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and you look back on it and you think, like, why was that even a discussion? Everything's like this big debate that goes on, and I think kind of you're in this kind of I don't know how to describe it, this kind of bubble where things that really aren't very important some become really important, and there's so much drama going on because no one's really in control, so, and no one, it's not like in another job where like if you throw a hissy fit, you might get fired or suspended or whatever, or there's just rules that you have to adhere to. There's not really any rules. There certainly wasn't any in our band, and so there was this kind of weird anarchy that was kind of going on, and everyone kind of just going about it how they wanted to go about it, to keep unified. I'm sure it's the same with every band, to keep the unity is hard. It's five of you, and I guess that's why maybe loads of bands don't do what the Rolling Stones have done, or do what the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I can't think of any bands that have been going on for as long as they have. Because U2 or something, because they just have either they have someone who's like in charge, or they have that kind of, we were never really that. We were just a bit wayward, really,
Yeah, I guess like a band that's one of the only bands that's still going from that time is the Cribs, and they were kind of saying like they've always been on the same page kind of thing, and always been rooting for each other, and I guess that's plays a massive part in it.
Well, they're related as well, aren't they?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, they're a good band. Yeah, they're related. So I guess, yeah, maybe that helps. I'm not sure. Maybe it doesn't help. I don't know. It's hard to know. But I think with a band, it's such a kind of inexplicable chemistry, isn't it? It's such a kind of you can't articulate the kind of the magic and the kind of sort of combustible sort of energy and kind of do you know what I mean? Like uncontrollable sort of forces and weird dynamics. You just can't articulate it. That's why it's so special. And I think particularly with our band, it was such a fucking, I mean, we just really fucking hit people, and how do you rein that in? How do you control that? It was uncontrollable, really. There's no way you could ever control it. So in a way, you're always kind of doomed with the bands like that because it's so like, it's kind of inconceivable, isn't it? Like you can't, it's like the Clash, they had so much kind of, the chemical reaction between those members was so kind of formidable that it was impossible that it was ever going to be able to you're going to be able to keep that together forever, and I guess it's probably a bit similar with us, really, we were a bit too out there, I think, which is great, which is why it was so special, It's hard, hard to keep that together, It's a shame, really.
We had talking to the Long Blondes on the last episode, and they kind of made the point that some bands are meant to like shine brightly for a short time, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, we still did it for 12 years. I mean, it was still a long time, and we're still recovering. I mean, being in a band is like I always imagine it's sort of like, when people come back from like fighting in Vietnam or like Iraq or something, and they've got PTSD. It's kind of like that, but worse. When a band breaks up, you're kind of permanently scarred, aren't you? No one's ever really been the same since. But it's great. I mean, I still love all of them. I'm still in contact with all of them, so it's great. But it is like it is kind of like coming back from war. Yeah.
You mentioned splitting up in 2011. Can you just describe that time? Was it kind of inevitable, do you think?
Oh, it's fucking horrible. I mean, I was sort of addicted to crack. I was addicted to smack. I was drinking around the clock. I got a phone call, basically told I couldn't go on the tour, the European tour, which at the time I was really angry and upset about. But I mean, looking back on it, it was totally unreasonable because I was just out of my mind. We did a few tours that year, and our album had just come out, and we'd signed a fresh deal to a subsidiary of Fiction, and so it was kind of like we did this kind of final. We didn't know it was going to be the final tour necessarily, but we did this tour in October, November 2011, and it was fucking horrible. I mean, I think I put everybody through a kind of version of hell really around then. So I've always felt really bad about that, and it was horrible. So then after that, I kind of knew it was the end for me, and then the band split up. Yeah, and then I was just sort of stuck in London, really, just really fucked off and lost and skint and just doing loads of drugs. And then I ended up getting kind of clean in 2011. And then the band got back together actually in 2012 for a little short while. But yeah, that 2011, it was horrible because, we'd had sort of lineup changes, and each time you have a lineup change, it's, you have to adapt as a band, I think we were all a bit weathered by that point.
And then am I right in thinking Nike using the song Chicken, does that kind of give you a bit of a second wind for you to get back together?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, we did get back together. Yeah. We did 5 shows, sold out. We got our old manager back. We tried to do a 4th record. We didn't manage to do that. We had a lot of big shows we cancelled. It was just one of those things. I mean, we just couldn't really kind of make it happen. Really, it was a shame, really, because I think we got a kind of a second chance at that point. There was a lot of interest around the band, and obviously it was just fucking weird that we got that advert. I mean, it was like a load of footballers like Wayne Rooney and it's like Chicken playing in the background, and it was quite a weird song. It wasn't even one of our, I mean, we never really had that many commercial songs, but it wasn't even that was definitely not one of them, and so there was like, we ended up kind of, I remember getting the text about it and thinking, fucking hell, that's really mad. And then, we did some shows and they were great, actually. The band was really strong at that point, like live, like we'd kind of got it back to how it should be. And we were pretty amazing on those gigs. Yeah. People like that's the best I've ever seen you, But yeah, I think creatively we were kind of going in different directions. So unfortunately we couldn't really make another record.
Right, yeah, and then you ended up ending it again in 2013, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, do you think that second, like you say, people say it's the best I've ever seen you, do you think you kind of grabbed it with both hands at that point to have a bit of a second chance?
Collectively, no, probably not, no. I mean, on a personal level, yeah, I was really up for it, but people were at different places, so it wasn't anyone's fault or anything. It was just a wrong time, Again, a lot of pressure. I think once you've got to a certain level with the band, it's never like 5 guys or 4 guys, meeting up and mates playing music together. There's always this kind of roar of like expectancy and kind of ordering going on from like, this is what we need and we need it now, So there was a lot of pressure on us, actually. We were always getting pushed, and I guess like we just couldn't really pull it together, unfortunately.
And yeah, I saw like one of the songs I was listening to off the second album, the first song, I forget what's it called, but it's covered by The Prodigy, is that right?
Oh yeah. So I was like, because then I did Piano Wire with Andy Huxley afterwards, and I was like in the car going to the studio with Andy, and my phone pinged, and it was like, all right, Sim, it's Liam Howlett. We just wanted to get the green light for covering Rise of the Eagles. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? How did this guy even get my number? So it was really mad. And Andy had written the song, and I was in the car with him. And it was just fucking mad, wasn't it? I mean, The Prodigy, I really loved them. I remember, trying to go and see them when I was 13, not being able to. I was too young, and kind of, we'd met Keith Flint actually in a festival in Spain or Portugal or something, and he had said he really loved our band. Weirdly, we were on the same stage as them, so it was kind of, their dressing room was next door to ours, so we kind of hung out with them a bit, and it's pretty cool.
And you just mentioned Piano Wire. How quickly did that start after the end of the second time in the band?
Straight away, really. Me and Andy had a few songs that we'd written for the unfinished 4th album, and we kind of reconnected. I hadn't really seen Andy or spoken to him at all since he'd left in 2004. So you're talking about sort of 9 years, really. I just barely had much contact with him, and me and him were kind of quite enthusiastic about doing some more music, and so we had these 4 songs that we just started off with. And then we just sort of took it from there, really. And then we did that from like 2013 to 2018, and then that ended then.
Yeah, and you recorded with Gil Norton, who'd produced massive bands like the Pixies and Foo Fighters. What was that experience like?
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, it was great. I mean, he's made so many kind of brilliant albums. So it was like, yeah, it was an honor, really. We went up to Stockport, I think. He really wanted to record in Stockport.
Right, it's around the corner from me, actually.
Oh, is it? Right, yeah. The studio called Eve Studios. Yeah, so we went up there. We spent like 4 days on one song.
Right.
Yeah, it was kind of insane, but it was great. Yeah, really cool. Great to work with him. I mean, Bossa Nova is one of my favorite albums of all time, and you know, he produced that, so I was pretty excited. You know.
And did you play a lot of gigs with that band?
Yeah, it's another thing. You know, as I was saying, you can never really tell what's actually fucking going on when you're in the band. I mean, we did quite well with it, really. We did tour a lot. We went to Germany, we went to France, we did a lot in the UK. We supported the Witches. You know, we put out a couple of albums. We were building, really. I think it's kind of different when you do a second time round. And I think the industry had changed to the point where, you know, you have to build a little bit more incrementally rather than what we did with 80s Matchbox, where we came out and we were like all over the music press straight away. It's sort of harder to do that now, I think. So yeah, but me and Andy kind of wanted to go in different directions. I suppose that's ultimately why that ended. But you know, it was pretty amicable. You know, we're still in touch and stuff. Yeah. I mean, hence the reason why my Primitive Ignorant thing is so kind of wildly different to anything I've ever done, really.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. There's like a lot of collaborations on there and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. How would you describe Primitive Ignorant then?
Sort of like a sort of industrial fuzz kind of pop, warped electronic kind of thing. I suppose what's it been inspired by? You know, I suppose it's sort of, I wanted to do something that, you know, still punk in my head, because it wasn't what anyone was expecting me to do. I think, you know, with 80s Matchbox, it was kind of impossible to better that as a rock band. You know, if I was going to do another guitar band, it was never going to be better than that. You know, I think Guy's such a sort of great frontman. I don't think, you know, you'd need someone better than him. You know, and I don't think that would have been possible, really. So I just thought, oh, fuck it, I want to do something, just be really free, a bit like Big Audio Dynamite were, you know, and just do it electronic. So it's just me. And then I can't sing at all. So I've collaborated with singers, but I've written all the words, done the majority of the writing, really, written all the words, and then worked with some singers on the tracks. But yeah, I just wanted to do something that was totally different, not what people expected, and to have that kind of freedom, you know, because I guess that's what punk is, isn't it? It's about being a free thinker. It's about kind of doing the unexpected. It's about, you know, it's like a way of life, isn't it?
So yeah, like how obviously like Idols are on there, Mick Jones, were there relationships you already had, kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, Mick Jones used to live around the corner from me in Ladbroke Grove, so I used to see him in the pub in the mornings when I used to drink quite often, and then I'd see him in Cafe Nero when I stopped drinking, and he seemed to stop drinking or something at the same time. But he lived like on the street down from me, so I used to see him all the time, and The Clash are like my favourite band. And the album is set in West London, so it made sense to kind of ask him to do it. I'd met him when we did Rock Against Racism with the Libertines, actually, because he did their 2 albums, so I kind of knew him a little bit, but we're not like friends or anything, but I knew him, you know. And Joe Talbot, yeah, I know Joe from Idols, so I just called him up and asked him. It's a bit like, you know, Mick and Joe in The Clash, so I really like Idols. I think they're kind of a phenomenal band, so it was really cool honour, really, to have both of those on there, yeah.
And how has that been in terms of, you know, we ask bands how things have changed in terms of making music and getting music out. Like, what do you think the big challenges are for new bands starting now, kind of thing? How have you found it, like, producing this album?
Yeah, it's harder, you know. I don't know. In a way, it's not harder because you know, you can put stuff up online, can't you? You can be an artist, you can be a musician just by setting yourself up online. You can reach people, can't you? Without having any label or management or whatever. You don't have to have any structure around you. You can just reach people, which is great. So anybody can do it. You know, and I guess the internet's kind of created an environment of diversity, cultural diversity. There's a lot of music available, a lot of different kinds of music available, you know, which is really great. But it's obviously harder because, I mean, there's this, you know, the digital world kind of took all the money out of the industry, didn't it? So as an artist, you know, you struggle probably financially more than you did. You know, there's no one giving you loads of money to go and make a record. You know, there's no one giving you loads of money to live off. You know, the idea of that we were waged by a label in 80s Matchbox just seems kind of, you know, like some kind of fucking Disneyland or something. Whereas it was totally normal at the time, you know, to get an advance and get waged, you know. Whereas now it's a lot harder. But it's the kind of same for everyone, isn't it? But I do think it's great that you can kind of be free in the sense that you can kind of, you know, you can make music and put it up online. Like I can make music on my laptop now, you know, after we finish this interview, and I can put it up and people can listen to it straight away, you know. So that's kind of great. You know, I could have a new track and people could be hearing it in like an hour's time. That's amazing, you know. It's great that everyone has a voice. I think that's really good. It's harder because I suppose, you know, the NME and Kerrang, you know, they were like the go-to places, weren't they? If the NME wrote about you, you know, you just got your next gig was full, you know. Whereas now it's like there's thousands of blogs and thousands of bands, and no one really knows what band's what and who's what and what's going on. And you know, I suppose I mean, obviously now because of the virus, there's no live shows. But disregarding the virus, I think there was a much stronger culture of going to gigs back then. You know, people just going to gigs for the sake of going to gigs and local venues, and it was just cheap to go and watch bands, and people were just into it. Whereas now, you know, you need to be told by at least 20 different people, you know, every day over the course of 5 years that a band's good before you check them out on YouTube, you know, and then you might go and see them live if you really can't contain yourself.
Yeah. I mean, a few people have said that, like, there's not one scene or one place to go. Yeah, like check out new bands like NME, or I suppose you get like Radio 6 who have good programs, but yeah, it's a lot more diverse now, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, but the diverse aspect to it is really great. I mean, that's the positive aspect, I think. But then, you know, at the same time, it's also would be cool, like if there was a scene of bands who kind of knew each other or who were aware of each other, or who, you know, I suppose like those bands in 2002 to 2005 maybe didn't really sound the same, but you could tell they were inspired by similar things, maybe like because Britpop had kind of happened in all of our youths. Maybe everybody had the same kind of upbringing musically or something. There was something connecting all those bands, but they probably all sounded quite different. Whereas now it's just random, isn't it? I mean, fucking just no two bands sound the same to me, you know, which is great, which I suppose is great, isn't it? But you know, fucking artists don't get paid well enough, you know. That's what the digital age has done. It's not allowed, you know. It's made it harder for us to survive, you know.
Yeah, like we've had people talking about the pay through from Spotify being pretty appalling and everything like that.
I mean, it's negligible, really. And by the time it's not negligible, you know, it's you know, you've probably got like such a big publishing deal that you don't even really notice the Spotify money coming through, you know.
Yeah, is that where the money is now, like, in publishing?
Yeah, and you know, tracks get picked up for films and stuff, but it was always sort of like that anyway. But I guess because no one's buying music anymore, that's the real problem, isn't it? No one's, you know, CDs don't exist anymore, really, do they? No one really makes CDs. No one's buying music. I mean, it's just, so it's harder to get any money out of a label, you know.
Was there a high point of of 80s Matchbox or those early days?
Yeah, I think probably being in LA for 3 months doing that second record was pretty amazing. Yeah, it was a bit like Fear and Loathing. Yeah.
Did you ever do any kind of home videos for making the album or anything like that?
Nah, because we were never really good like that. I suppose the phones weren't really didn't have camera phones and stuff in those days.
Yeah.
So there's not really much footage, and which is a shame really. I've still got some kind of disposable cameras in my loft I need to get developed.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there anything you do differently about 80s Matchbox?
Yeah, I think I'd like to have just got less wasted and maybe practice my instrument a bit more.
Yeah, we always try and finish on a funny story about the Gallagher brothers if possible, but just a funny story in general about that time would be good.
I did share a flat with Liam Gallagher for an afternoon. Right. It was really fucking random. We went on to do this show called Born Sloppy with Sarah Cox, and Appletons were on, and we went to do the sound check, and someone was like, "Oh yeah, and there's a flat for you around the corner that you'll be sharing with Liam Gallagher," and I just didn't really think anything of it. I thought it was like a joke. So I was sort of sitting there in this flat. It's just like a normal flat, like my flat or whatever, just like a normal flat. And I was having a spliff, watching TV, and the door fucking burst open, and Liam Gallagher walked in, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" And it was just really, really confusing because I guess as a kid growing up, he was on TV and everything everywhere, and Oasis was such a big band, and so it was kind of weird. And he came up and said, "Oh, I've seen your video." I was talking about Psychosis Safari. I kind of found the idea of him watching that video quite sort of hilarious. But we had the same agent, so I think our agent was always trying to get us to tour with them, which would have been kind of, sort of amazing and ridiculous at the same time. Yeah.
So how was he defined in that afternoon? Just fairly normal.
Oh yeah, I thought he was cool as fuck. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Totally, man. Kind of, total sort of, total start, really.